Masechet Baba Kama Daf Lamed, a new Mishnah that in some ways is similar to the previous Mishnah. Hashofech Mayim B'Reshut Harabim V'Uzak B'Hen Acher Chayav B'Nisko. If I pour water in the middle of the street and someone comes and it is damaged by it, I am liable. The previous Mishnah was about if I have a jar and I drop it and the water goes all over the place and causes damage. So this one seems like it's even more direct, more purposeful, that I'm pouring it there. So assuming this is my water, I am responsible for it. I am responsible for liability. Hamasnia et hakos v'et hazechuchit v'hagoder et gedero bekosim v'gader shenaflu l'rshut harabim v'uzku behen acherim chayav ben nizkan. If I have a thorn or piece of glass and I want to get rid of it, and so I hide it out and into someone else's wall, maybe it's like a mud wall, and I just stick it in there, and that's one case. Or if I build a fence with thorns, it's a thorn fence, and then someone walking by and on the outside part of it in the street gets stuck on a thorn and gets injured by it. Or if I have my fence, my wall, and it falls down into the street, and then someone trips or gets injured by one of the bricks that fell into the street. In all these cases, someone else that gets injured, I am liable for in all these cases. This is my dangerous item that I left in a place that it could cause damage to someone. I should have put it in a better place that would surely not cause damage to anyone. And my wall, I'm also responsible to make sure that I have a good solid wall that's not going to fall on people. Okay, Amar Rav, lo shanu ela de nita nefu kela b'mayim, aval hu atzmo patur karka olam mizikato. Rav says, as he said in the previous Mishnah, that when do we say I am liable for the water that I spilt? That's only if some clothing fell in the water, and maybe it's a very delicate cloth, silk cloth or something, and just by getting wet it gets ruined. There, I am responsible because it was directly damaged by the water. However, if someone simply slips on the water and bangs his head on the ground, that is not directly my problem. That's the ground's problem. So this is karka olam. This is the ground of the world. So go blame the creator of the ground of the world. Yes, true that my water may have caused him to slip, but the actual damage happened when he hit the ground, and so it's the ground's fault, and it's not directly my responsibility. I am not liable. Amar le Rav Huna le Rav, lo yehe ela ke'rifsho. So Rav Huna asks Rav, why should I be not liable? And for if it hits the ground, shouldn't it be at least the same case as my filth? Let's say I had some muddy garbage and I put it into the street and someone slips on it. I am responsible, right? Especially if it's mine, and especially if I keep ownership over it. And it has to be a case where I keep ownership over it. Otherwise, you see here, Rav talks about clothing, and clothing is a vessel. If it's a board that I don't want, then then I would not be liable for damage to a vessel. So here we're talking about something that I keep ownership over, and therefore it has causes damage like a shard, where vessels are. I'm responsible for vessels. Okay, in any case, if I own the mud and it caused someone to slip and fall on the ground, I would be responsible. So it should be the same thing here, where there's a puddle of water that I put there, and that caused someone to slip on the water and hit the ground. So even if it's just indirectly, not the damage is not from the water itself directly, but from the impact with the ground, still I should be responsible. And so we answer, Mi sevarat de la tamu maya bid tamu maya. Oh, did you think when the water is still there? You're right. If the water is there intact, there's actual puddle there, then that's an actual thing that's mine that caused you even indirectly to slip. I would be responsible. But here we're talking about a case where the water got absorbed into the earth and created mud. So if I actually put a whole mound of mud, I would be responsible. But if I just put the water, so I'm responsible only for the water, but not for the mud, because the mud is made from a combination of the earth that was already there and the water. Therefore, what the person slipped on is the mud, which is a combination of the earth that was already there and the water. And so that's not my mud. You can't call it my mud. It's only the water part of it that is mine. And so therefore the indirect damage caused by the slipping on the mud is not my problem. Only the direct damage of the wetness of the mud, the water that is still there, if by something gets wet because of the moisture that's in that mixed into that mud, that I am responsible for, because that water still does belong to me. Now we ask, V'tarte lamali, why do I need two different mishnayot to teach me basically the same halacha, that if I cause water to be spilled in the public domain and someone is damaged by it, then I'm responsible? The answer is chada bimot hagchama v'chada bimot hageshamim. The Gemara, interestingly, does not go into how it got there because of my jug that I dropped or because I poured it. That's not the difference between them, but rather I need two of them to teach me that I am liable both in the summer and in the winter. What's the difference? Well, in the winter, I'm allowed to put garbage and waste into the street because it rains all the time and the rain is going to wash it away anyway. In the summer, it does not rain, so anything that I put into the street is going to remain there, and I'm responsible. So I'm more responsible in the summer than I am in the winter. So I might have thought if I put it there in the winter season, then I would not be responsible, and that's why I need both Mishnah to teach me that I'm responsible in the summer and in the winter. And we know this is true from the following Baraita, the Tanya. Kol elu shamru potkin bibotehen v'gorfin me'arotehen bimot hachama en lahem reshut bimot hageshamim yesh lahem reshut v'af al pi shebereshut im iziku chayavin leshalem. The Baraita says that whenever the rabbis say you are allowed to open your gutters or flush out the stale water from caves and you can pour it into the street, that is, if you do that in the summertime, you do not have permission, right? Because the summer, it's just going to stay there for the rest of the summer, this garbage and smelly stuff and bad water that you put there. However, in the wintertime, you have permission to do that. Now, even though you have permission, it's not against the law, it's not against halacha to put your waste in the street in the winter. Nevertheless, you still are responsible. Even though you put it responsible, if someone gets damaged by it, you do have to pay. So yes, you can do it, but it is at your own risk. So you see here that both in the winter and the summer, one is liable for water, waste, something that one puts in Reshut Harabim. Next part of the Mishnah, Masniya et hakotz. If I take a thorn and a piece of glass and I stick it in someone's wall, and it causes damage, I'm responsible. Repeating here what we quoted, Rabbi Yochanan is saying also on the previous daf, that when am I liable? Only if it's sticking out a lot, all the way into the Reshut Harabim. But if it's restricted, I put thorns, but I put them close in so that it's still on my side of the border, it's not sticking out into the Reshut Harabim, then that's okay. I'm not responsible for that. My tama patur, why am I not liable? After all, I did put things that are sticking into where people walk, and the answer is because it's not the way of people to walk to rub against the walls. In other words, when you walk in the public domain, you leave some space between yourself and the fence. Right? You leave a few inches between your body and the fence. Therefore, if a person comes along and he is really rubbing along the fence as he's walking along and then gets stuck by a thorn, that he is doing something unusual. That's his problem, not mine. Whereas if it's sticking a lot into the actual Reshut Harabim, where people normally walk, then I am responsible. Interesting case of I come and I put some thorns or some pieces, shards of glass into your wall, and then you come and you knock down your wall, and everything falls into the Reshut Harabim. Now someone else comes and gets damaged by the sharp items, the glass that I put into the wall. So on the one hand, it's my glass because I put the glass into the wall. On the other hand, I put it in a relatively safe place, and you came and moved it, pushed it down into the Reshut Harabim. So there's both of us have a reason to be responsible, but the Baraita says that It's my glass. I put it there. I am responsible. I should have, it seems, have known that eventually it might fall out, or these walls are like, mud walls that would have to be rebuilt every so often. And so I should have known that eventually it's going to fall out or come down, and so I didn't put it away really very carefully. So that's the bottom line, that I should have put it in a better, more permanent place, like dug it up underneath the ground or something. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo shanu ela bekotel ra'ua, aval bekotel bari, hamasniya patur v'chaya ba'al hakotel. So Rabbi Yochanan says, since that's the reason, this is only true that the owner of the glass is responsible if it's a unstable wall. I see a rickety wall. I see it's going to either fall down, or the owner is going to knock it down to rebuild it sometime soon. And therefore, I should have known better than to put a dangerous item into the wall. But if it's a healthy wall, that I say, this is a nice healthy wall, this is going to be around for a long time, so then I acted responsibly by putting the glass into the wall, and therefore it's the wall owner's responsibility that they broke the wall, so they put this dangerous item in the middle of the street. So we just have to look at who's acting the most irresponsibly. If it's a healthy wall, then it was within my normal right to stick it to hide this glass, and I was not going to cause damage. But if it's an unhealthy wall, then I should have known better, and I should not have put the glass there. זאת אומרת, המכסה בורו בדליו של חברו, ובא בעל דלי ונטל דליו, חיה בעל הבור. Let's say I have a pit. In the middle of the street, I dig a pit. Now, I see a bucket over there. It's your bucket. I know it's your bucket. And I take your bucket and I cover my pit with it. And then you come and say, hey, that's my bucket. And you take your pit and thereby uncover the pit. Who's responsible? I am. I'm the owner of the pit. Why? Because I should have known that you're going to come along. You're going to want your bucket back. I don't know. You left it over here for a few minutes. I'm like, okay, I'll take this bucket. I'll use it to cover my pit. So I'm leaving it safe. But I should have known this is your bucket and you're going to come and take it soon. So I should have used something better that would be more permanent. And so even though you are the immediate cause of the pit being dangerous, I am the underlying cause and should have anticipated the immediate cause, and therefore the owner of the pit is liable. This is the same case. The equivalence is I put the pot shard there. Now, even though the immediate cause of the glass shard being put into the Shut Rabim is you, because it's your wall that you knocked down, nevertheless, I should have known that you're going to knock down your wall soon, because it's an unhealthy, unstable wall, or it would just fall by itself. So I should have known that, and therefore not put the piece of glass in there in the first place. So here in both cases, even though I'm not the immediate cause, I am the underlying cause, and I should have anticipated the immediate cause, and therefore I'm liable. So yes, Pishita, Ravina, why do you have to tell us that? That's so obvious. All right, just took us 10 minutes to figure it out, but they think it's obvious. The reason I need both is because I might have thought, in the case of thorns, or the piece of glass, the owner of the wall doesn't know who put it in. Right? All day long, there's people walking by. They don't have cameras to see who put it in there. So there's no way he can go and tell the owner of the glass that he should go and take care of it. And so therefore, the owner of the glass is going to be responsible. However, in the case of a pit, the pail owner knows whose pit this is. I mean, there's not that many people. It's some village, right? And you see who dug this pit over here. Yeah, someone nearby. This guy dug the pit. In that case, since the owner of the pail knows whose pit it is, he shouldn't just take his pail and leave a dangerous situation there. He should go and let the owner of the pit know. Listen, this is my pail. I'm taking it, and it's going to leave something there. And therefore, the pail owner, since the pail owner can identify who dug the pit, the owner of the pail has a responsibility to go and find that person, let them know, listen, I'm going back another 20 minutes, I'm taking my pail, you better go and cover it. If the pail owner takes it without covering it, then this is what I might have thought, the pail owner is responsible. So Kamash Malan, that's why Ravina had to say that these cases are actually the same. Just like the owner of the glass shard is responsible for putting it there in the first place, even though they're not the immediate cause, they should have realized that this would happen and someone would break down the wall. So too, the owner of the pit is responsible, and we do not say that the owner of the pail should have went and found the owner of the pit. No, the owner of the pit is responsible and should have known that the owner of the pail is going to come, and we don't place the responsibility for the owner of the pail to go and find the owner of the pit. The owner of the pit is fully responsible. We end off this sugya saying, Tenor Rabbanan, Chasidim Rishonim hayu masneim kosotehen uzechurchiyotehem betoch sedotehen umamikin lahem shelosha tefachim kedei shelo yakev machare sham. Since we talked about cases where someone should foresee that something they're doing now will lead to a dangerous situation, and even if they're not directly the immediate cause at the end, they're still responsible. So we go into a teaching about the Hasidim. Sometimes there are things that, even if legally they're technically allowed, one is not responsible. Nevertheless, one should go beyond the letter of the law and make sure to prevent any damage from happening. Like do some defensive driving and defensive living. So the pious people, they would take their thorns and pieces of glass, their garbage that they had from that, and they would hide it in their own fields. And furthermore, they would put it at a depth of at least 3 handbreadths, so that they would not obstruct the plow. In other words, if you put it only on the surface, and then the plow comes, the plow will bring it back up, and then people may step on it or fall on it, and it'll still be dangerous. So they will put it in their own field, not in the public domain, not in someone else's wall. And then even within their own field, they put it deep down so that it will definitely not come to harm anybody. Rav Sheshat shadeh lehu benura. Rav Sheshat, he would put his thorns in fire, and that's it. You burn them up; they're not going to harm anyone. Rava shadeh lehu bediglat. Rava would throw them into the Tigris River, also a very safe place. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hayman deba'ele meheveh hasida lekayem mileh din nezikin. Rava Amar mileh de avot v'amri le mileh de berachot. Rav Yehuda says, if someone wants to be a chasid, he should fulfill all the matters of nizikin. He should go through nizikin and see what are not only the direct ways one can damage, but also all the ways in which one can be negligent, and avoid any possibility of someone that getting damaged. And so that takes a lot of forethought to say, will this lead to something that will lead to something that even might make me responsible. So if you learn the laws of Nizikin, then one can be pious, and this is emphasizing ben adam lachavero. Rava says, if you want to be a chassid, learn avot. You learn about morality and ethics and good character traits, as virtue ethics. So that's more like, the first one is more utilitarian. Second one is more Aristotelian, with virtue ethics. V'amri la mile de berachot. And others say, if you want to be a chassid, learn the Masechet Berachot, about prayer, about saying Berachot, about Thanksgiving, focusing on Ben Adam Lamakom. And when someone is Yireh Shamayim and knows that Hashem is watching over him, and also feels gratitude all the time, then one will be pious and will not come to sin or to be jealous of people or to try to harm people. And so these are 3 different avenues to reach a level of Chassidut. We now come to a new Mishnah, Hamosi et tibno v'kashor l'rshut harabim lizvalim. If someone puts straw and hay out in front in the street, so that can use as fertilizer. In other words, they have the straw and hay, but it needs to be composted, and they want people to step on it. It's helpful to them that animals and people will come and step on it. It makes them softer, and then it's compost, and then it can be used for fertilizer. So he's putting it out into Reshut Harabim. Ve'uzak bahen acher chayav benisko ve'kol hakodem bahen zacha. If it becomes slippery and someone comes and walks and slips on it and gets injured, the owner of the hay is liable. He's putting the stuff in the middle of the street. Not only is he liable to pay for damages, anyone who wants can come and take that straw and hay and just take it for themselves. This is as a penalty. It's a fine so that people won't do this in general. So in other words, even though a person technically has a right to put their straw and hay out there, so people will step on it. Nevertheless, he takes the risk by doing that. And also, we really don't want people to do that. So you know what? Anyone who wants to come and take it, and then hopefully the owners will not do that anymore. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Kol mekalkelin b'shut harabim v'hiziku chayvim leshalem v'chol hakodem bahem zacha. Rashbag seems to be saying the same thing as Tanakama, except instead of using straw and hay, he says any obstacle that someone places in the public domain, if it causes damage, he has to pay, and anyone who wants can come and take it, right? You decided to put this, whatever, television set in the middle of the street, and it can cause damage. So not only do you have to pay for damage, but anyone can take it. It seems that like they're saying the same thing. The Gemara at the end of this stuff will explain that Rashbag says you can even, the people can come and take not only the amount that it increases in value, but even the thing itself. The principle of what they put in, because it increases in value as more people step on it. Tanakama is more limited and says that when people take it, they'll have to pay for the base amount, but they can keep the increase in value of it. All right, we'll get to the difference between Tanakama and Rashbag, but right now they seem to be saying something very similar. And finally, how fechet hagalal b'shut harabim v'huzak bahen acher chayav benisko. We saw this already on the previous daf. If someone comes and flips over dung in the middle of the street, and so this is not, it's not his, he didn't put it there, someone else put it there, or maybe someone's ox, whatever, but this guy turns it over, and then someone else comes along and is injured by it. The person that turned it over is liable for its damage. If he just leaves it there, it's not his problem. But once he moves it around, then it becomes his liability. Okay, now let's analyze the first part. Lema matnitin de la Rabbi Yehuda. It seems like the Mishnah is not dependent on Rabbi Yehuda. What did he say? The Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda omer bishat hotzat zevalim adam mosi zivlod reshut harabim vesobro kol shiloshim yom kedei sheyehen nishof beraglei adam beraglei behema shalmenat ken inchil Yoshua et haaretz. Rabbi Yehuda says that during the fertilizing season, right, whenever it is that farmers put fertilizer, so then anyone is allowed to take their fertilizer. If it's talking about zebel, we can assume that's talking about dung or something like that. That he wants to use on his field, but he wants to put it out in the Reshut Harabim first to get it ready, and he can let it accumulate there for 30 days so that people will step on it. It's good. It's good for him for people to step on it, and it makes it better to use. It seems pretty gross for people walking, but I guess the streets were pretty dirty anyway. That the reason why this is permitted is because when Yoshua gave the inheritances of the land to all the tribes, he did it on condition that the public domain can be used for this purpose. Right? We have public domains, and they can be used. We can use them for parking. We're allowed to take our garbage and put it on the curb, although we have to be only certain days and times in a certain way. But this is the condition of the public domain, is that you are allowed to use it for things like that. You can't use it for anything. And so the public domain was given to the people on condition that they are allowed to use it to put fertilizer out in the street so that people will step on it and improve it, and therefore it's permitted. So you see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it is permitted to put fertilizer in the street for people to step on. Presumably, if it's permitted, then the owner is not liable. So this contradicts the Mishnah that says if someone puts out their fertilizer and someone gets injured, then the owner is liable. Rabbi Yehuda said not liable. So it seems like Rabbi Yehuda is not the author of the Mishnah. And we explained, not true. Maybe Rabbi it is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda here only said that it's permitted. Yes, it's permitted, right? You're not violating any law by putting your fertilizer out in the street. However, buyer beware, or put the person who puts his dung out, beware that he's doing it at his own risk. So yes, you're permitted to do that, but just know if someone gets damaged, then you will be responsible, and furthermore, they can even take it. Okay, so maybe Rabbi Yehuda is saying, yes, it's permitted, but nevertheless, you are responsible for if someone gets damaged. Now, v'hatanan. Hold on. Rabbi Yehuda Omer bener Chanukah patur mipnei shehu b'reshut ma'alav mishum reshut betin. Hold on. We have a baraita, even though it says Tanan, that Rabbi Yehuda himself says that regarding ner Chanukah, on Chanukah, where you have to put the lamp outside of one's. We're talking about a store here. And if someone gets gets damaged by it, like if their donkey is carrying grain and the grain passes the flame and gets on fire, the store owner is not liable because he did it with permission. So what does that mean, permission? That the Beit Din says that you're allowed to put your lamp outside in the street on Chanukah. So since he does it with permission, he is not liable. So you see, according to the Rabbi Yehuda, the two go together. If you're doing something with permission, then one is not liable, and therefore this answer doesn't work. Right? Rabbi Yehuda said there's permission to put the fertilizer out, therefore one is not liable, and in fact he contradicts the Mishnah. And we explain, Lo mishum reshut mitzvah, the Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, bener Chanukah patur mipnei shehu reshut mitzvah. No, it's not just reshut Beit Din that's permitted. It's even stronger than that. It's permission because it's a mitzvah. It's not just that you can do it if you want. You actually have to put your ner Chanukah in front of the store, into the street. And so that's what the Yehuda says. On Chanukah, the lamp of Chanukah, on Chanukah, one is not liable because it's permission granted in order to do a mitzvah. And so that's an exception. But otherwise, even the Yehuda would say that things that you're allowed to do, like put the fertilizer in the street, still you're liable if it causes damage, and therefore he can be reconciled with the law of the Mishnah. All right, so far so good, but now we're going to have a more significant challenge. Tashema kol elu shamru mutarin lekalkel b'reshut harabim im hiziku chayavin l'shalem v'Rabbi Yehuda poter. Regarding the items that the rabbi said you're allowed to put in the street, like we saw before, opening one's sewage tank or emptying out the moldy water into the street, one is allowed to do in the rainy season. So one, even though these are going to cause obstacles, so these are allowed to do. Nevertheless, even though you're permitted to do that, if it causes damage, it's at your own risk and you are responsible. In the summer, you're responsible, and you're also not allowed to do that. You're also violating a law. In the winter, it's permitted, but you are responsible. That's Tanakama, but Rabbi Yehuda says, no, since it's permitted, you're not responsible. So you see that according to the Rabbi Yehuda, being permitted and not being responsible go together. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda in that Baraita, who says that's permitted to put fertilizer out, must also think that if one is injured, then there is no liability. And so now back to the problem, Rabbi Yehuda cannot be the author, cannot be reconciled with the Mishnah. So we have two answers to this. Amar Rav Nachman matnitin shelo b'shat hosa'at zevalim ve'Rabbi Yehuda the Mishnah is talking about a time of year that's not fertilizing time. When it's not time for fertilizing, then you're not allowed to put your stuff out into the public domain. And you're not allowed, and therefore, if someone gets damaged, one is liable. But Rabbi Yehuda, his halacha was talking about a time of fertilizing, when that's when it's permitted. And at that time, yes, in fact, one would not be liable for if someone gets damaged. And so that's how we can explain by that the Mishnah is reconcilable with the Yehuda, because we're limiting the Mishnah to be only a time where that's not fertilizing time. That's one answer. Rav Asher amar tivno v'kashotenan mishum de mashreki. Rav Asher says, no, we're talking about different types of items. The Mishnah is talking about straw and hay, because those are slippery as they decompose. Maybe they get wet, so that those become very slippery, and so they're particularly dangerous. And even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that you're liable for putting that out. That's different from Rabbi Yehuda's the Braita, where he was talking about dung. Dung is not as slippery, apparently. I guess it's more dried out already, and it seems more gross to us than stepping on straw. But anyway, in the reality back then, the straw was more slippery, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says if you put your dung out during fertilizing season, it's not so slippery, and therefore you're permitted to do that, and you're not liable. But for straw and hay, that is much more slippery, and therefore one is liable. That brings us to the next part of the Mishnah. Kol hakodem bahen zacha. We make a penalty that if you put out your straw in the street, then anyone can come and take it. Amara ben begufan ben beshivchan uziri amar beshivchan aval lo begufan. The question is, how much can you take? Let's say he puts out straw that's worth $10 when it's raw. That's the base amount. But then, if you leave it there for a while and everybody steps on it, now it becomes worth $15 because now it can be better used as fertilizer. It's all composted. So when it says people can come and take it, what can they take? Rav says they can take the entire amount, both the base amount and the increase in value. Zidi, however, says no, they're only entitled to the increase in value, not to the base amount, which means that if they go and take this guy's straw, which is worth $15, they have to pay the owner back $10, so they only can keep the increase of the $5. Now, what's the essence of their machloket? B'may kami palke. Rav savar kansu gufan mishum shibchan, uziri savar lo kansu gufan mishum shibchan. Rav says that the rabbis made a penalty of the base amount because of the increase amount. So really, the owner does not deserve is an increase amount, because that he put it out there, and then this is not, the rabbis don't want him to do that. So they say, listen, you're going to lose out the increase. While they were making that penalty, they said, you know what? We really don't want you to do it. We're going to throw the book at you. If you try to put it out there to get the increase, you're going to lose even the base value. So Rav makes a total kanas, whereas Zidi says, no, we don't have to go that far. The guy, he put it out because he wants increase, so he should lose the increase. But the base amount, he should keep. That's the reason for them. Now, we're going to prove Zidi's point, a challenge to Rav that says that they can take the entire amount. Tenan, from our very Mishnah, if someone moves some dung in the middle of the street, and someone else comes and is injured by it, the person that moved it is liable, either because he moved it away and now he created a new board, basically, or because he is acquiring it for himself, and he says, by moving it here, flipping it around even, I want it for myself. Okay, whatever the reason is, he is liable. But notice that in that part of the Mishnah, it does not say kol hakodem zacha, right? It's worth looking at the Mishnah here. In the beginning, it says for the hay that anyone who takes it gets to keep it. But in that part of it, it doesn't say. It says chayav b'nizko is liable, but it doesn't say anything about the keeping the base amount. So what's the reason that in the Resha, anyone who comes along can keep the hay, but in the Sefa, regarding the dung, anyone who comes along cannot keep it? Apparently, it must be because hay improves, so it's worth $10 now, and then it's going to be worth $15 because of that. Someone can come and take it because he can benefit from the increase in value only, the $5. But dung, which does not increase in value, is not enhanced much and doesn't get that much better. Therefore, one cannot take it because one is only allowed to take the increase in value and not the base amount. So you see that the Mishnah is reads well according to Zer'idi, where for you can only take the increased amount, not the base amount. For hay, there is an increased amount, so you can take the whole thing, and then you'll keep the $5, and again you'll pay back the owner $10. But for dung, where there is no increased value, you cannot take it at all. So this is a challenge to Rav. Rav can answer, Tana l'resha, v'hu adin l'sefa. No, the Tana just wrote that clause in the first half, but we assume it applies to the second half as well. You don't have to say it again and again. So in fact, both for hay and for dung, a passerby can take the entire amount. Hold on. V'hatane ala asurin mishum gezel. There's a braita that we're about to read that says regarding the dung case, you're not one who takes it is prohibited from taking it, and that would be stealing if they do, which means you're not allowed to take it. There is a difference between the hay and the dung. The hay you're allowed to take, the dung says you're not allowed to take. So you can't say that it just said in the beginning but not at the end. We explain, Ki katani asurin mishum gezel akula matintin ka'el oto shekadam v'zacha. And you say, no, actually, that phrase that is prohibited because of stealing can actually be on the entire thing, not just the sefa, but even the resha. Now, it's actually not so, we're going to see in a second, but we're trying it out. Maybe in all cases, it's prohibited as robbery, but what that means is that if someone else comes and take it from the passerby who took it first, then that would be stealing, which actually just means that one is permitted to take it. So if the owner puts out the hay or dung out into the street, passerby A is allowed to take it, and then if passerby B takes it from passerby A, the passerby B, it would be stealing. Maybe that's what it means. But in fact, yeah, you can take the entire amount of all of them, and this is okay for according to Rav, whether it has an increased value or not. And we say, no. V'hala katane hachi. The Baraita does not actually say that. Ditnan, again, even though we have Ditnan, it's not a Mishnah. It's a Baraita. Hamosit ibno v'kasho l'shut harabim lizbalim v'usak bahen acher chayav ben nisko v'chol hakodem bahen zacha umutar mishum gezel. So the first half is about straw and hay. If someone puts it out in the street, as for to compost to be used as fertilizer, and someone is injured by it, the owner is liable. And furthermore, anyone who comes and takes it it's his, and it's permitted to do that in terms of robbery. So there's no prohibition regarding robbery. So this is mutar mishum gezel, is the same as saying kol hakodem zacha behen, whoever takes it first is permitted and is not going to be called a robber. And then the second half contrast that and says if someone moves dung in the middle of the street and someone else comes and is injured by it, so that person is liable, and this is prohibited in terms of robbery. So you see from this Baraita that there's a clear difference between cases of hay and cases of dung, and you cannot apply the phrase anyone who comes and takes it can. You can't apply you can't apply that to the case of dung, where it clearly doesn't say that, and also you cannot apply asur mishum gezel to the whole thing, because the first half actually says mutar mishum gezel. So it's clear that the permission to take, and it's not called stealing, only applies to the first half. And when it says it does not apply, stealing does not apply, that clearly refers to the one person who takes it in the first place, the first passerby, not to someone who takes it from them. And asur mishum gezel means that one cannot take it even in the first place. So it's that the answer that you had before is impossible. So now once again we ask about Rav, why according to Rav is dung different, and why doesn't he say since you're allowed to take even the base amount, so why can any passerby take the dung as well? Why does it say that you're not allowed? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak galal karamit davar sheyesh bo shevach kansu gufo mishum shivcho davar she'en bo shevach lo kansu. Rav Nachman says you're asking about dung. You can bring a contradiction from that. It's completely different. The rabbis only made a kanas, even according to Rav, they only made a kanas for something that increases in value as it gets stepped on. So if it has an increase, then they made a penalty even for the base amount, because if you allow the base amount, then people will put it out anyway. And so we want to really stop it. So we say there's a full kanas on everything. But if there's an item that does not increase in value, then they did not make a kanas at all, not on the increased value because it doesn't increase in value, but then they didn't see a need to make a fine on the base amount either, because it's less likely that they're going to put it out. If the dung case, they might be just putting out for storage to store it up, but not because it increases in value by people stepping on it. And therefore, there's no need to make a kanas because it's not going to increase in value anyway. So people are not as motivated to put it out there. And so therefore, there is in fact no kanas at all on dung. So this is perfectly understandable. So again, according to Rav, and the first half talking about hay and straw that increases in value, there Rav says people are allowed to come and take it and keep not only the increase and even keep the base value. But dung, which does not increase in value, there is no penalty imposed at all, and people cannot take it at all, no part of it. Good. Question: Ibaya lehu. L'divei Omer kansu gufan mishum shibchan la'altar kansinan or lechi ma'iteh shibcha kansinan. According to Rav, who says that there's a penalty there on the entire amount of the hay. Let's say stick with hay. Does the kanas, this a fine and permission of anyone to come and take it, does it apply immediately when the owner puts it out in the street and it's still worth $10? Or does the permission to take it only come into effect when it in fact increases in value, when it goes up to 15? The point is that according to Za'iri, who says that you can only take the increase in value, so then you can't take it right away. You have to wait till it increases, and then you could take it and then pay back the $10. But according to Rav, who says that anyone who takes it can even keep the base value, so maybe they can even come when it's only right away, even though it's only worth $10, and take it right away. Is that true, or do you have to wait till it becomes 15? Since you're only allowed to take the base value as a gezerah for the increased value, so maybe you have to wait till it increases in value before you could take the whole thing. And so we try to answer it. Tashema mideka airinan galal. Well, from the fact that we asked a question above against Rav from the case of dung, it would seem that you could take it right away because dung does not increase in value. And yet we said, according to Rav, it should be permitted to take it. And for dung, it doesn't matter if you take it right away or after time, because it doesn't increase in value. It's always just worth the base amount. And therefore, we can derive that according to Rav, one can in fact take it immediately, even though right now it's only worth $10. Is that a good answer? We say no. V'tiz beraki ayrinan galal mikamed lishnet Rav Nachman. Lebatad shen Rav Nachman miika lemirma galal kelal. Says no. That question was only before Rav Nachman answered it. But once Rav Nachman answers it, now there's no need to compare galal to hay at all, because Rav Nachman concluded that one is not allowed to take the dung at all. There's no permission to take it because the rabbis did not make a kanas. Since it doesn't increase in value, there's no kanas even on the base amount, and so one can't take kanas. One can't take the dung at all, and therefore you can't bring a proof from the question stage, because once it's answered, the question goes away totally, and you can't compare them at all, and therefore we leave this question open. We next continue to analyze this machloket, and we ask, Lema ketana'eh. Perhaps the two opinions between of Rav and Za'iri parallel the two opinions in the following baraita between two Tanaim. Shtad shekatu bo ribit, konsin oto ve'no gobe lo et hakeren ve'lo et haribit, divrei Rabbi Meir. Hachamim omerim gobe et hakeren aval lo et haribit. Lema Rav damar keRabbi Meir, uZa'iri damar keRabbanan. If someone writes a loan document and they include an interest payment in the loan document, which is prohibited from the Torah, so we don't want people to do that. So the rabbis come and make a fine, and they say, listen, not only can you not collect the interest, you can't even collect the base amount according to the Rabbi Meir. Right? We made this loan document. You're charging interest. We tell the lender, you know what? You can't collect the loan at all. That'll teach you a lesson. However, Chachamim say one is still permitted to collect the base amount. That there's no prohibition regarding that, just the interest. That's where the prohibition is. Okay, so it seems that Rav would agree with Rabbi Meir that one takes the entire amount, the base amount, and the increase. Once you do something wrong, you lose out even on the base amount, and we make a fine for the whole thing. And Zairi might agree with Rabbanan that the only thing that you can take is the increase, only the interest, but you can take the base amount, and so too with the hay. Some people can come and take the increase, but not the base amount. That seems like an interesting parallel, even though they're from different areas of halacha. The logic seems to be similar, but this is a problem because we don't want to lock in one Tana to one Amora. They would just say, "Oh, I agree with Rabbi Meir. I agree with Rabbanan." Why would they have to say their own thing? And this is more problematic even for Rav, because that means that Rav is following a minority opinion and not Chachamim. So we answer, Amar lach Rav, Ana damre afilu Rabbanan. I can be reconciled even according to Rabbanan. Ad kan lo kamere Rabbanan hatam ela keren de behetera, aval hacha keren gufa kamazik. When Rabbanan said over here that one can collect the base amount, just not the interest, that's because the interest is permitted. You're allowed to lend money and collect the same amount. The only prohibition is on the interest. So therefore, you can't collect the interest, you can collect the base amount. But here with the hay, even the original amount, the original thing that you're putting there is a problem because it can cause injury. And so you're violating the laws of even by putting the base amount there, and therefore you deserve to lose not only the increase, but even the base amount. All right, so the cases are different. Ziri says, I would agree even with Rabbi Meir that you can collect the whole thing when it comes to loans. Ad kan lo kamer Rabbi Meir hatam ela demishat ketiba dabad leshuma aval hacha miyemar demazik. Because Rabbi Meir, I would agree with Rabbi Meir. Why is he so strict? Because at the time of writing the loan document, he's already making an appraisal of how much he's going to collect. In other words, all right, that there's a prohibition already from the time of writing the document, even before he actually paid any or the lender collected any interest. He already, just by putting it in the document, that you're going to have to pay this much more when you pay back. So therefore, you deserve to lose the entire amount because there's a prohibition right there from the beginning. However, in this case, when he puts the hay out, who says that it's gonna cause damage? I mean, there's potential for damage, but until someone causes damage, he didn't do anything bad. All right, if I put something out, that's dangerous. And then an hour later, I bring it back in. No one got hurt. Okay, so that's okay. There's no need to make a fine if there was no actual damage done. Whereas for interest, as a biblical prohibition, you can't charge interest. You can't even write it in the document that you have to pay this much, and therefore it makes sense to be more stringent in the case of loans, but more lenient in the case of the hay. All right, one more question along similar lines. Okay, fine, they can reconcile themselves according to each Tanaim there, but how about this one? Maybe Rav and Zairi, their argument is parallel to the following two Tanaim. Someone puts out his hay and straw in the middle of the street to use for composting, and someone gets injured, the owner has to pay, and anyone who takes it can, and it's prohibited in terms of stealing. Now we're going to have to ask a question. This doesn't make sense. If you said anyone who wants to come and take it, whoever takes it first come, first serve, anyone who wants to come and take it can, though then what do you mean that it's prohibited because of stealing? If it's stealing, then they can't take it. If they can take it, it shouldn't be stealing. We'll deal with this. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Kol mekalkalin b'shut rabim b'yiziku chayavin l'shalem. Similar to the wording in the Mishnah, it includes everything. Any kind of thing that's dangerous that you put in the Shut Rabim and someone is injured, one has to pay. So that's good. That's the same. And anyone who wants can come and take it, and there's no problem of robbery. So now we have so he says also you're liable and it's permitted. Now this one makes sense. Anyone can take it. There's no problem of robbery. So now we're going to ask, Ha gufa kashya amar kol hakodem bahem zacha v'adar kamar asur mishum gezel. The question is on Tanakama. First you said that anyone who wants can take it, and then you said there's a prohibition of stealing. Well, which one is it? Ela lav hachikam kol hakodem bahen zacha b'shivchan v'asurin mishum gezel agufan. It must be interpreted like this. When it says anyone wants to come and take, that's referring to the increase in value. But the base amount, that's prohibited because of stealing, and you have to they have to pay that amount back. So this works with Zaidi, who says that one can only take the increase in value, but not the original amount. And then Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lememad afilu gufan name kol hakodem zacha bahen zacha. Rashbag says I disagree, and I say anyone can take it, and there's no problem of gezel, meaning you can take the increase amount, and there's no problem of even taking the base amount, and that would fit Rav. So here we have Zaidi follows Tanakh Kama, and Rav follows Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So again, it's a problem for an extra problem for Rav, who's following the minority opinion. So it says Liz'idi v'adai tana'ehi. Fine. For Z'idi, it's totally fine. And he's following Rabbanan, so he's good. L'Rav mi lema tana'ehi. But according to Rav, are you going to say it's macholka tana'im and he follows only Rashbag? Amalach Rav dekula ama kansu gufan mishum shivchan vehacha behalacha ve'en morin ken ka mipalge. And Rav says no. In fact, everyone in this baraita agrees with my opinion that anyone can come and take the base amount and the increase in value. We make a kanas from one to the other. And yes, in fact, you can take everything. So that fits perfectly with Rashbag. So what does Tanakh Kama mean? Tanakh Kama was saying that this is a halacha, but you should not teach it in public. That's what they're arguing about. And this fits into the language as follows. Right? He says, listen, anyone who takes it can, because Rav says, and that's talking about the whole amount. Here's the original language. Anyone who wants to take it can. That's referring to the whole amount, because technically it's permitted to take. That's Rav's position, and everybody's in agreement that you can take the whole thing. The thing is that the rabbis did not want to publicize this, because then people are going to get used to going and just taking things that aren't theirs. Anything that they see in a public domain, I'll take this, I'll take that. Then they're going to get used to stealing. It was a bad idea. So even though technically it is a fine and we want people not to put their dangerous things in public domain, and so we made a fine and said that anyone can come and take it, but we don't really want people to go and start stealing things all the time, taking things, even though it's not stealing in this case, what the rabbi said, but they got used to that. So we don't really want people to do that. So even though it's a technical halacha, we don't teach it. So when it says asurim mishum gezel, this is what we say in public, even though technically it's not gezel, and one's allowed to take it. So that explains the contradiction here. It's technically permitted by the fine, but we discourage people from doing it. It's not really stealing, but it's just discouraged. Now, how do we know that this is machloket? Te'itma Rav Huna amar Rav halacha ve'en morin ken. Rav Ada bar Ahava amar halacha morin ken. In fact, these Amoraim argue along the same lines. Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, says that although this is a halacha that is permitted, still you cannot teach it. So that would follow the Tanakh Kama. And Rav Ada bar Ahava says this is the halacha, and yes, you can teach it, and that would be Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. We next ask a question about these two opinions of Rav Huna and Rav Ada bar Ahava. They seem to be contradicted. Ini veha Rav Huna afkar chulshe, Rav Ada bar Ahava afkar selikusta. We have actual cases where Rav Huna, this is the one who said up here that this is a halacha, but we don't teach it. But he himself, when he saw some people put dried barley out in the public domain, he said these are ownerless. Anyone can come and take it, which means he was moreh. It is halacha and morin ken. That's the opposite of this, halacha ve'en morin ken. Rav Ada bar Ahava, who said over here halacha and you can teach it, he himself did in fact teach it, and he declared ownerless some residue of dates that someone put out in public. So that's okay for Rav Ada. Bishlama Rav Ada bar Ahava kishma'ateh. He's consistent. He says yes, you can teach it, and he did in fact teach it. Ela Rav Huna lema hadarbe. But Rav Huna, what did he change his mind? First he said you can't teach it, and then he actually did teach it, or the other way around. around? And we said, no, hanhu muterin havu. No, these people that put the barley out, they were forewarned. They kept doing this, and we told them, stop, don't do that, put it back, don't put it in the public domain. And they kept doing it. So for that reason, Rav Huna made an exception and said, listen, anyone who wants to come and take that barley can come and take it. So he did it for that particular case where it was necessary. However, in general, he would say, we don't go declare or tell people, yeah, go find someone who puts in something in public and go take it. We don't want people to go looking for things and taking things that aren't theirs, and so we don't teach it usually, but it is a halacha in the books for a good reason, because when we need to find someone and stop them from putting out the dangerous things in public, then we can activate it. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.